Hello and welcome to GEOSCOPE on Labour Social. I'm Graham Hughes, and down here we have Ollie, Bowler Hatman. How you doing, mate?
All
You
right,
all
all
right?
right, all right. I am doing well. I'm
Yeah,
doing very
good,
well.
good.
Of
At
course,
Ollie
we
approves.
missed you last week because obviously you had your Ukraine adventure.
Well, I wasn't. I hadn't actually left. I left on the Wednesday, and then Thursday was driving all the way to the border from Germany. I flew to Germany, and then I drove to the border with Ukraine. With these two other guys who helped me out, Adam and Frank. And then on the Friday, we went over the border. It took 5 hours to get over the border, 1 hour to get to Lviv. Then we drove around Lviv for a bit, went back to the border, 5 hours back over the border. And then we went to the first sort of major city over the border, a place called Reznau. I'm probably saying that completely wrong. But it was fantastic. It was really good. I had a celebratory beer, and then the next day we had to drive from pretty much near the border with Ukraine, all the bloody way to almost Luxembourg, and it should have taken about 12, 13 hours, but it took 18 hours.
Wow.
We didn't get back till 3 in the morning, Ollie, because of the snowstorms.
A long way.
There are so many snowstorms in the south of Germany. We were sort of skirting it. We were on the very north extremity of it, but yeah, it was torturous because the little, the squirty things that you squirt your window with.
Oh yeah,
when you're driving.
The ices.
Yeah, that froze, and then the pipe burst. So yeah, that wasn't great. What can you do? So yeah, but we had over I think it was something like 1,000 presents actually in the end, if you count everything up. But we had over £4,000 worth of Lego that is now being distributed around Ukraine. We've had 86 presents given out already today to kids in special needs centres, and also kids in sort of remote villages in Kharkiv Oblast. So I'm really sorry if I'm a little less articulate than I normally am. I'm absolutely knackered. As you haven't stopped. It's pronounced Zezhuv, says Sfax. There you go. Rezhuzao it looks like, but it's pronounced Zezhuv. That's where we stayed on Friday night, which is good. Does Graham never sleep? Occasionally, it's been known.
Yeah,
it's been known.
It's been known to happen.
But yeah, Ollie, let's start with the craziest news of the week. It's just come in from Venezuela, who have just had a referendum.
Pick up where we left off last time,
and they have voted 95% in favour of going and murdering their neighbours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, this isn't good.
No, murdering neighbours is never good. Voting to murder your neighbours is not the best, is it?
Yeah, and it's a real attempt to try and justify sort of taking this territory. That's really the be all and end all of it. And this is partly because initially Guyana reached out to the international courts, and of course the international courts have said, no, Venezuela, you can't annex this part of this country. So Venezuela's part of that referendum, part of the 5 questions that they were asked was, do you want us to ignore the international court? So yeah, this is honestly this is a bit of a crazy plan, because not only now is this involving Venezuela and Guyana, because if you may remember last time we were talking about this, Venezuela decided it was going to move troops to the border for illegal mining activities. That's what they were doing at the border, nothing else. All this was happening to go on, but they were just really there to stop those illegal mining activities. Of course, since then, things have escalated a bit. Guyana has now
massing on the border, not intending to invade.
Yeah.
Honestly, Venezuela and Russia are close buddies. Russia will be all over this. They'll want this instability.
Very familiar. It sounds all very, very familiar. when you think
Why
back
would you
to.
vote? Why? I mean, look, I've been to Venezuela a couple of times. Really like the place. Lovely people. I can't understand why so many people would vote to murder their neighbors.
Well, it's not from what we know from the results. Not many people actually voted.
I thought it was 50%.
Yeah, but like the other 50% decided not to. So
Well,
in a way, it's not being seen, especially Guyana is using the lack of turnout to the vote. And they had to extend it an extra day. The government decided because there was such a low turnout, they had to extend it an extra day um, to get more people to vote initially. So Guyana is sort of really seeing this as a justification that this referendum can't go ahead and that this was a massive failure for Maduro and his government. But of course, they're seeing this as, oh, well, this is mass justification for us.
justification to go and murder our neighbors who have
Yeah,
lived next
and
to for hundreds of
it's
years.
now that point where what's going to happen? And even Brazil might get involved as well now because they've
Yes.
also moved troops up to the border.
Well,
Um,
weirdly, if Bolsonaro was still in charge of Brazil, and let's be frank, thank God he's not,
mm.
he would just declare war on. He would have already declared war on Venezuela for this because
Oh yeah,
he
he
absolutely
was
hated.
asking for any excuse to
Yeah,
go
he
into
hated
Venezuela.
Venezuela. And Venezuela has had a rough time of it. It's been in a state of perpetual economic collapse now for 15 years. The end of the Chavez administration and then all the way through the Maduro administration. People go on what they call the Maduro diet, in which they lose loads of weight because there's no freaking food. Central America, Colombia, and other places in South America are flooded with young men from Venezuela who have left to work. Not quite refugees, not quite economic migrants. It's kind of like, cross between the two, somewhere in the middle, i.e., they probably
Yeah.
didn't think their lives were in danger, except for the fact that they'll starve to death if they stayed in Venezuela under Maduro. So they've left and they send money back to Venezuela. But as a result of that, all those countries around Venezuela have tightened up their immigration.
Yep. Yeah, like I say, Venezuela is really not in a good state, and this is part of the reason why the invasion. Well, why Maduro wants to do this.
Yes.
He's got an election next year.
Oh, really? Economy not doing well. Let's go and
Yep.
invade our neighbor. That always works so well. Are they
Yeah,
not
and
seeing what's
also that's
happened
a
in
good point
Ukraine?
actually. Safix in the chat also brings up a good point. And of course, that's also, I believe, if there was no meddling with the results in the
Well,
referendum as
that's
well.
true.
So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
you know,
This is.
um,
I don't think this has ever happened before. I mean, I know there was referendums during the Nazi regime in Germany where it was like, do you
yes,
want
let's vote
Adolf
to
Hitler
annex
to
Austria.
be Führer forever? And it was like a massive circle the size of a pizza for yeah, and 9 was like this tiny dot on the other side of the page or something in very very thin ink,
Mm.
faint ink. Um, I don't recall them ever doing a referendum. Shall we annex half of Czechoslovakia? But they must have done that. Did they do that?
No, no,
No, this is the first time anyone's actually asked the people of the country if they want to go and murder a bunch of people next door.
yeah, and this is what happens now. It's what if this does actually kick off in Venezuela? Um, I think someone's already, yeah, Paul Awen already said it in chat. Um, there is a possibility the US might get involved.
Yeah, if
Um,
Biden wins the election next year.
yeah,
If Biden doesn't win the
what?
next election, mate, all bets are off. I think we'll head very rapidly, surprisingly fast towards World War
Yep.
III if Trump wins.
And like I say, there
There'll
were a
be a
lot
civil war in
of.
America to kick it off. Russia and
Yep.
China will be like, "Hey, this is awesome." Russia will just nuke Ukraine. It'll just drop nukes. It doesn't care. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't care how much suffering or pain it causes. It doesn't actually want Ukraine as a country. It just wants power, unlimited power. China's going to invade Taiwan, and Trump will be sitting there in America, president for life, and it's going to be a very, very, very horrible world to live in if that's what happens next year. And looking at the polls, it looks quite likely. But
Yeah,
Trump's not going to
no,
support Guyana.
there's going to be a lot of push for that from the Republicans as well. The Republicans have always talked about how much they hate Venezuela.
Yeah,
Always talked about how much they hate
yeah. They used
Venezuela.
to talk about how much they hated Russia.
Mm.
Now they're all on Russia's side. Oh, well, not all of them, but most Republicans are now thinking, oh, yeah, Russia's got a point there invading Ukraine. They want to stop all the money going to them. They want to stop all the funding. In fact, they have stopped it because Congress can't decide anything at the moment.
Yeah, and that's another bad point about the whole Congress as well at the moment. Um, and I think I said this last time. This has to be something that David Lammy has to be thinking about. Um, if there is, a Trump victory, he has to go then to the rest of Europe and say, "Look, um, it's up to us now to really go and fund, Ukraine, and
Yeah.
start funding their war effort." Because, well, with Trump in, I don't think, shall we say, the bills to sort of send more money to Ukraine probably are going to be very forthcoming.
No.
Um,
Well, he hates Ukraine and he does exactly what he's told to by Putin. I mean, he's so far up Putin's arse, you can see the future.
yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, I think it's one of those things of he will say, or at least he'll probably do fall into sort of Putin's trap in some way, shape, or form. I think what will happen is, if you remember when he went to go see um, Kim Jong Un in North Korea, he went to go see him and bring peace. Do a deal with Rocket Man. That will probably what will happen again. He'll probably go to Russia. There'll be a big photo op, um, and it'll be a big PR coup for Putin. Um,
Yeah. Um,
we it's been said before. I think it was from the North Koreans to the Chinese. Is that guy, um, is that guy real? Is he is Trump for real? Um,
yeah.
but
Helen
no, a lot of
Wilkes.
people sort of really suss Trump out. That if you
Yeah.
sort of flatter him and um,
Tell him how great he
maybe
is and
probably give him a bit of a
give him
couple of
big head.
backhanders. There's all
Yeah.
this talk about Joe Biden's son in America at the moment. Um, possibly going to sort of testify before the Senate committee hearing that are having about him and about all this, supposed money from China that he got and from Ukraine as well. No evidence for it,
No,
no
no
evidence at
evidence.
all. Um, but the thing they don't talk about is, of course, the Russian links to many in the Republican Party.
Well, they won the Republican Party, and a lot of these mysteriously funded think tanks in
Mm,
America, like the Koch Foundation and the Heritage Foundation, all these bullshit artists.
yep.
We don't know exactly where all their money's coming from, but we could probably have a guess. Helen, thank you very much for the super chat. Nice to know you're keeping positive. See, this is what happens when I'm tired, Ollie. I just get really kind of down on everything. Um, one positive note: the Tories are going to be out on the arse next year.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, but probably with probably with maybe a couple of Reform MPs in.
Um, yeah, they're probably going to do a deal, aren't they, with reform? But that's domestic
Um,
politics. We're supposed to be
I
talking
don't
about
know if they will do a deal with Reform. We'll see what that happens. But
yeah,
if you look at the way they're polling at the moment, um, they're doing neck and neck with the Liberal Democrats.
yeah,
Um, at about 10, they're doing about either 10, 9, or 11%, depending on what polls you look at. And they're either behind the Lib Dems in the polls by like 1%, or they're literally neck and neck. And from what we know, from what we've seen, it's Tories, diehard Tories, right wing Tories, um, voting,
yeah.
um,
And the Tories can never
moving
be
over to
Tory enough for the
yeah.
Tories, can they?
And that's the other thing. I, the new Rwanda agreement has been
Oh, that
signed.
was signed
That's literally
today.
just been signed today in the past couple of
Yeah,
hours. So I don't know too much
which
about it. Um,
so,
that's
but
something else I've got to look into. But so far, from what I've heard, it means we're spending even more
yes,
public money to
yes, to not send
Rwanda.
people to Rwanda. So
Yeah.
one of the obstacles that was brought up by the Supreme Court in the UK was that basically there was a danger that refugees would be transported to another country, deported to another country that was unsafe, or back to their own country, which would be even
Mm,
more unsafe. And so what Cleverly's done, he's gone over and he's done this deal where they've said they definitely won't send people over to these, back home or over to some country where they might be killed. Problem with this is that Rwanda had a deal with Israel in which they said they wouldn't do that, and they did. And that was brought up in the court case. Also, a few years ago, there was a protest at a refugee camp in Rwanda, which resulted in dozens of refugees being shot dead by the Rwandan security forces. On top of that, the president of Rwanda, Paul Kagame, is a dictator. I mean, he locks up people who are his political rivals. We think that he's organised assassinations. Obviously, nothing can be proved, but yeah, I mean, Rwanda's a beautiful country. People there are just incredible. They do a few really amazing things over there, like they're quite up on the whole health and safety. They close the roads every Saturday. Maybe not every Saturday, but like maybe once every other Saturday. They close the roads so people can go and pick up litter, keep the country clean, stuff like that. It's just there are some things about it that are just awesome, and also there's gorillas there as well. But their political system isn't great, and why we're sending genuine refugees to a dictatorship is beyond me. Well,
and to be honest, this is one of the things that fools me. If you remember, I think it was back when Boris Johnson first came in, we had that whole vote about reducing the foreign aid budget.
Yeah.
And of course, that went through, and we reduced the foreign aid budget. And the whole theory of this was that it was time to stop spending money, to sort of foreign third world countries, and we can finally spend it back here. And now you've got the Tories who use that justification to cut the foreign aid budget to now start supporting this Rwanda deal to send more money to a foreign country.
Yeah.
Just but if you use that same justification to try and say, oh well, maybe now we should relook at rebuilding back up to the foreign aid budget where it used to be. Oh no, we can't do that. Oh no, we can't do that.
That's just what they'll expect us to do, Ollie. So you were telling me before we came on about Boris Johnson was intending to invade the Netherlands. What was all this about?
Oh yes.
Tell me.
This story dropped.
What's the hot goss?
This story crept out of nowhere, because I'll tell you what, no one had this on their bingo card. I guarantee it. I guarantee no one had this on their bingo card. Yeah, Boris Johnson potentially starting a war with the Netherlands because he wanted to go over to the Netherlands and steal a load of vaccines. And that
sorry. What? How would he?
Yeah. So cast your minds back.
The Netherlands, which is a NATO member. So this is a NATO. The head of a NATO country wanted to invade another NATO country, right?
Yep. So yeah, cast your minds back to March of 2021, I believe it was, and you may remember Boris Johnson having a big row with the EU at the time, because obviously we're still trying to figure out withdrawal agreement stuff. It really wasn't going well, so Boris Johnson was doing his old ooh rah rah, I'm being tough against the EU. I'm not going to bow down and take what they're saying, etc., etc. And of course, during this time, this was when the vaccines were just starting to be manufactured, and they were just starting to be delivered and just starting to be rolled out. And of course, one of the big manufacturing places of vaccines, where we got a lot of our vaccines came from Europe. So guess where they were all at. Now, of course, Boris Johnson, I think, has said that Netherlands were blocking these vaccines and were going to steal them themselves. Of course, that didn't happen because we have an agreement with a company. The Netherlands themselves would get in a lot of trouble if they actually did that. It wouldn't be looking good for them. And of course, these vaccines moved anyway. The Netherlands didn't stop them, coming over.
Yeah.
But of course, what happened was Boris Johnson wanted the security services to draw up military options to perform a raid into the Netherlands to
Oh
get these
my
vaccines.
God.
And when
What
I read this, and I've done a video
the...
about this afternoon, and I just couldn't believe it. I could not believe
Oh my God.
genuinely what I was hearing. Um,
Oh my God.
it's honestly, it's just unbelievable. And it boggles the mind of what would have happened if he had signed off on it, because you think this is the prime minister.
Yeah.
If he's asked for plans to be drawn up, and
Yeah.
you're a civil servant, you're like, well, guess I've got to draw up plans to raid the Netherlands. you know, I mean,
Bloody hell.
what do we expect? I mean, history.
I'm thinking this might be to do with. So we got the AstraZeneca jab, didn't we? First, or was it the
Yeah,
Oxford jab? Wasn't it? And so the Tories like to go on about how we had the fastest vaccine rollout in Europe because of Brexit, which wasn't true in any way because we actually secured all those deals and everything while we were still in the EU, while we were still a full. We weren't technically a member of the EU, but we were still following the rules for a year following January 2020 when the British flag was taken down. So we procured all this under the auspices of the EU. So that's not true. And also we weren't the fastest. We were the fastest at the gate. We got to the first fence the fastest, but then all the other horses caught up with us. And especially because in 2021 it became evident that the AstraZeneca jab, I think it was at the time in the UK, the prevalent jab in the UK, caused blood clots, could cause blood clots in a minority of cases with younger people. So they decided to hold off vaccinating younger people until they got some more Pfizer jabs to give out. And Pfizer had already done the deal with other countries in the EU, so they got the vaccine first. So we didn't get the Pfizer till after the summer of 2021. So that actually slowed down the vaccine rollout a lot. And that's why, people in their 40s weren't getting the vaccination till 6 months after the first vaccination came out.
yeah.
Go.
And then, as I've said before, if he'd actually authorized this, if he'd done this and basically performed this raid, that will count as an act of war.
Yes, it
And
would.
Now we're at war with the Netherlands. And here's
All
the thing:
bets are off.
historically, the Brits haven't done that too well against the Netherlands.
When have we ever gone to war with the Netherlands? 1688, Glorious Revolution.
Quite a lot in the 1600s. Not only did they steal King Charles I's flagship in a raid up the River Thames, but of course, as you just said, we call it the Glorious Revolution. The Dutch call it the Dutch invasion of England because that's what happened.
Well, they did. They took over. William III of Orange came over and decided to become our king. Yeah. My God, you think it just can't get any madder. It gets madder.
Yep.
There you go.
And all this is going to come out tomorrow. All this, tomorrow, I can guarantee, is going to come out more tomorrow.
We have, he's just going to deny everything. Boris Johnson's a pathological liar, and he honestly believes his lies are true. He honestly believes that there were no parties. Just like, I'm sure Tony Blair honestly believes there are still weapons of mass destruction to be found in Iraq. The fact that they were never found is by the by. Right, should we move on to our next little topic of discussion? COP28, which is taking place at the moment in the UAE. And the Sultan Al Jaber, who is the COP president of this particular, Committee of Parties? Is that what it stands for? COP Summit. He said there's no science behind demands to phase out fossil fuels.
And we'll all go back to the Stone Age if we do.
Yes, it'll take us back to caves, he said.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I'm sure it has nothing to do with the fact that he's a member of one of the OPEC countries, one of the one of the many countries of the 8 countries that group together to form OPEC, one of the biggest producers of oil in the world. And of course, their countries rely on this oil revenue. So I'm sure has no vested interest.
Not at
He's got
all.
no vested
No,
interest at all in,
no.
seeing the reduction of oil used on the world stage.
That is just it's painful, isn't it? Like that we are held hostage by these money men, these grubby, horrible, nasty little money men who are just out to feather their own nests at the cost of the planet, the
Mm.
entire bloody planet. Oh, this is probably what feeding in my sort of feeling of just
Oh,
not great about everything that's happening in the world at the moment. There was a guy, a copper that we were talking to on the border when we were leaving Ukraine, and he reckons that the conflict is going to go on for at least another 5 years
mm.
in Ukraine. And again, it's one man just destroying the planet. Trump, Putin, Erdogan, Modi, Bolsonaro, that bloody gobshite in Argentina who's just been elected.
Oh, have you read his papers?
No. What?
So,
What?
yeah, on Unlearning Economics, a really good channel, by the way, if you want to learn some economical stuff. He's really good at that. He's an economist himself. He's been reading his papers,
Yeah.
and it's based on like his libertarian ANCAP theory. And oh my word, they are insane. if you want a good yet somehow terrifying, horrific laugh, especially if you're probably sitting in Argentina, considering this guy is probably your president now. Yeah, give them a read. Give the video a watch.
What's it called again?
Unlearning Economics.
Unlearning. I think I'm gonna just gonna look that up.
Yeah.
Oh
He
my
did a
God.
live stream this afternoon on it,
Uh,
and it's
oh, there we go. There you go. I'm subscribed to Unlearning Economics. Yeah. Planned obsolescence will kill us all.
yep. Really good channel, especially when you learn sort of the uh, also the fact that economists fight like schoolgirls. Literally. There was a piece he pointed out in one of his videos where he points out in The Economist, where you've basically got two leading world economists, both on like different sides of their theories, and they're basically going, no, my paper's right and you're wrong, to each other in what is meant to be The Economist, which is like one of the world's premier economics magazines.
Oh my God.
um yeah, it's kind of scary. It's kind of scary when you think about that,
Ah,
but
right.
oh boy.
I don't know if I've got the right channel here. Unlearning Economics Live. I can't find the video you're talking about.
Oh,
But I will do this. We'll do this when we're not
yeah.
online.
But
Yeah.
yeah, well worth a watch. Yeah.
But what else I
Fun.
wanted to talk about was the fact that I have just got back from Ukraine, and yeah, I feel like w- the world has kind of forgotten about it. It feels forgotten. The people there are a little bit unhappy with the way that things are going. That you know they don't seem to be on the
Yeah,
agenda
I mean,
anymore.
one of the big things I think everyone was hoping for, that there would be, um, a significant breakthrough in the summer offensive, and it's not that they didn't have successes in the summer offensive. If you've been following any of the um, blogs about this, they have made some advances, but they haven't been big sweeping advances
No.
like they did the previous summer,
Yeah.
where they took back about 50% of their territory and
Yeah.
liberated Kharkiv, the northern city up there.
Yeah.
So there is, I think, a sort of a lack of sort of news, or at least not seemingly positive news, even though, to be honest, they've constantly been fighting against Russia. They've had uh, a number of really good victories recently. There was a fight near. You've obviously heard about the big dust up they've been having over what was it, Arkiva, not Arkiva, Ak- Ak- um, mm, Akidiva, I think it is.
Good luck. Svax will
It's
be able to
it's
tell you.
sort of south of Bakhmut, I think it is,
Okay.
and they lured over, I think it was 2,000 Russians into a trap,
Yeah.
bottled them up, and then pretty much captured them all. That's gotten reported, that they had that massive success.
Yeah.
Um, and it's just one of these things of, um, other things happen in the world,
Yeah.
and an ongoing war. There's lots of ongoing wars. I mean, as we've mentioned Myanmar before. Myanmar's been in, under a civil war, and the rebels over there, and the people trying to restore their government over there against the military coup that took over.
Yeah.
They've been, launching a lot of attacks and trying to sort of retake their, restore their democracy. Um, Unfortunately, it's just the news cycle. It's the inevitable 24-hour news cycle. But one of the things you have to sort of keep on doing, and one of the things that I think we do on here is we talk about it and we keep on
Yeah.
talking about it. That is the important thing, and we keep on reminding people this is a still ongoing conflict, and they still need help and support. And this comes back to what you said about, well, what if Trump wins? Well, David Lammy needs to have a serious plan. What happens if that happens?
Yeah.
He needs to go rally all the European countries and get them together and say, look, we need to sort of really think and solve this, whether it's
Yeah.
even more harsh sanctions on Russia, um, and sort of really start to close off their economy even more. And whether we start to look at, well, who else is still trading with Russia? Do we still go, well, okay, we notice you're still trading with Russia. Um, Maybe we put sort of, sanctions on, not full sanctions, but maybe we say, well, if you stop trading with them, we won't put sanctions on you for those goods, because, the goods that you're trading with them go to sort of help their military. Um, so it's a possibility, but of course, the big thing, of course, is weapons. Um,
Yeah.
I think us sending Storm Shadows over has proven over time to be a fantastic move. The Ukrainians keep on proving time and time again, using Storm Shadows on strikes on the Kerch Bridge. We've seen them
Yeah.
strike artillery depots. We've seen them use them very strategically in numerous attacks on tactically viable targets against Russia. So
Yeah.
um, that has been proved time and time again, that if we send the Ukrainians the weapons that they need, um, they can get the job done.
And
Um,
also for the Americans, I mean, it just comes to me it seems to me like a no-brainer, especially if they send the ammunition over, because
mm,
ammunition goes out of date after a while, so they'll only have to scrap it anyway. They're giving this stuff to someone else's army so they can go and take out a load of Russians who are supposed to
yeah.
be the Americans' enemies. Although everything's
I
gone
mean,
topsy turvy now. I was just reading up what you were saying about Burma. Sorry, Myanmar. I didn't even realize, but yeah, the hunter in charge, the junta, is the verge of collapse, according to the Financial Times. I didn't even realize, mate. Well, there you go.
yep. So yeah, again, Myanmar's another a situation, but we'll probably have to talk about maybe that next time.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
of course, we all remember in 2020, if you remember the news when it broke, the world found out about it because there was a live streamer um, doing yoga. She was the oh, what was his name during lockdown? The exercise guy. Can't remember his name now.
Joe Wicks.
That was in Joe Wicks. Yeah, she was like the Joe Wicks of Myanmar, with yoga, and she's just doing a live stream. You can even see on YouTube the live stream. She's just there
Yeah.
doing a yoga, and then all of a sudden these military vehicles just start convoying past, and then they all get out, and you can see them start storming the parliament. That's how we
Wow.
found out that there was a
Wow.
coup in Myanmar. As bizarre as it
Another coup.
sounds.
Another coup. Yeah. But I mean,
Um,
yeah, Ansung Suu Kyi. I hope I'm saying her name correctly. She was the great hope, wasn't she? That she would bring in
yeah.
this new era of democracy and peace and love in Myanmar, and she didn't. And the Rohingya Muslims were brutally ethnically cleansed, pretty much, with many of them, many hundreds of thousands of them leaving uh, Myanmar to go live in uh, India and Bangladesh. Not she didn't really cover herself in glory. I think she won the Nobel Peace
Yeah.
Prize before then. Although Henry Kissinger died last week, and
Yes,
he
that
won
was
the
a good
Nobel
point.
Peace Prize. So
Yes,
it's fascinating
probably
when these
one of
people.
the greatest war criminals in the world.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you started saying the word greatest there, I was a little bit worried for a second that you were going to go
yeah,
in a different direction. And I was
yeah,
going to go, excuse me. But yeah, this is the guy who sanctioned the bombing of Cambodia, which
yeah,
had nothing to
Cambodia.
do with the war that was happening in
Yeah, I mean,
Vietnam at the time.
yeah, Cambodia. He also helped start the military dictatorships in Argentina,
Yes, Pinochet.
Chile.
Yep,
Um,
yep.
yeah, this guy was not a good guy. I think the only good thing he ever did was he managed to
Died.
normalize relations with China,
Yeah,
and that was it.
and then he died.
And then everything else was just really bad. And one of the weird things is, do you hear about the book that two journalists had written?
No.
So they'd written this book, which was going to be released upon his death. It was going to be like
Yeah,
this anti Henry Kissinger book to basically say, okay, this guy's now died. This is how bad this guy was. This is like his litany of crimes he's committed.
yeah.
The book was made, done, and ready to be published back in 1999.
Wow.
Both these journalists who wrote the book died before Kissinger died.
Oh my God.
That's how, like, they were expecting him to die in like the year 2000, 2001. And
Oh,
yet he
and
managed to
yet.
pretty much almost make it to 100. Well, no, he did make it to 100, didn't he? I can't
Yeah, he
remember
did
now.
make it
Did
to
he
100.
almost
Yeah,
make it? I can't
made it
remember
to
how
100.
old he was.
Yeah, yeah.
But
100
yeah,
days.
yeah, this is a guy who really he really knew how to use American power, but he used it in some of the most horrific,
Yeah,
horrible ways you can probably
yeah,
think of. And
and had no compunction,
yeah,
compunction,
yeah,
whatever.
no
It,
compunction, no,
about it, he never thought they did a
yeah,
bad thing. He thought they
yeah,
was completely in the right, even
yeah,
when he was bombing the living crap out of Cambodia, when they were landmining the crap out of Laos. Laos is the most heavily landmined country in the world, and Cambodia is arguably the most heavily bombed country in the world. I think within the first few months of the Cambodian the assault on Cambodia, the bombing they used more bombs than were used in the whole of bloody World War Two. It was just insane the amount of damage, and also don't forget the instability that came
mm,
from that led to the rise of the Khmer Rouge under Pol Pot, and over a million Cambodians being slaughtered
yeah,
for being intelligent, for being a teacher, for wearing glasses. People
yeah.
were murdered.
Kissinger is responsible for a ton of crimes, and unfortunately, um, he never faced his day in court. Unfortunately, um,
They never do they?
but that's the sad thing about that. Unfortunately, but he's dead now, so he can't do any more damage.
Well,
In that
yeah,
regard.
yeah, true. But I'm sure he'll still haunt the world from beyond the grave.
Oh yes,
Plum
his
Duff,
actions will continually to haunt the world. That's for
Plum
sure.
Duff in the chat. Everyone
Um,
wants me to do a Brian Blatters impression, but they're saying I'm too tired, which I probably am. Maybe later. But Plum Duff said 2024 could be a really scary year. Now, 2024 is going to see over 1 billion people go to the polls
mm,
around the world. There's going to be big elections in
yeah,
India.
70 elections worldwide
Yeah,
next year.
there's elections in Russia. Not that that's going to make much of a difference. Elections here in the UK, elections in the US, elections in the EU, and a lot of things could go very, very badly.
Mm,
I think the Tories. It's safe to say the Tories are on the way out in this country. I can't see any road for them to cling on to power. It might not be as big a landslide as it looks at the moment because obviously the polls always tend to narrow towards a an election, but the Tories have thrown absolutely everything, including the kitchen sink, at trying to narrow the gap between the Tories and Labour. And it's still 20 points. It was 20 points a year ago. It's still 20 points.
In fact, that's the thing we have to watch out for. So Keir Starmer, or at least the rumor is Keir Starmer, that this week will be going to ask Rishi Sunak to ask him to see if he can get permission to start talking with the civil service.
All right.
And that normally happens when there's a general election very close.
Yeah.
So the fact that Keir Starmer has asked, or he's going to ask Rishi Sunak that question this week, if he gets a yes from Rishi Sunak, then that means that there is a general election around the corner, probably within 6 months. And like I say, this is a pretty normal thing in democracy, because, you know, the opposition at some point has to go talk with the civil service to say, hey, if we win, these are the kind of things we want to do. You know, you might need to get ready for them just in case. So this is a pretty normal thing, but it's a big indicator that there's an election. And if this is being reported that Keir Starmer is going to ask this question of, of Rishi Sunak, then there's an election around the corner.
Facts are saying the Ethiopian president also got the Peace Prize before the recent civil war, which is true.
Yeah.
And all started kicking off in the region near to Eritrea, which used to be part of Ethiopia until about 1991. For some stupid reason, Ethiopia was never colonized. It was the only African country that wasn't colonized. It managed to not be, just through some miracle. I don't know how exactly, but Eritrea, which was possibly historically part of Ethiopia, or the Ethiopian Empire as it was back then, they used the same language in Eritrea. They used the currency is called the Nakfa. I know that because I've got a note on my table. I've got a table full of notes from around the world. But yeah, Eritrea basically was a different religion. I mean, it's 50% Muslim, 50% Christian. It was an Italian colony, so they have, they're into their lattes, I guess. And so when they were lumped in with Ethiopia, there was always some discontent with that. And then in 1991, they got independence after quite a brutal civil war, part of which was one of the reasons why there was such a massive famine in Ethiopia in the 1980s, was because it was exacerbated by the war that was going on with Eritrea. And Eritrea now is like, it's like a mosquito trapped in amber. It's like locked in time. It's been time locked. You go there now, and there's still buildings that were bombed in the 1980s, just left as they were. The government's not been able really to grow the economy, and the government, out of panic, probably has become more and more authoritarian as the years have gone by, and that's why a lot of refugees that we get coming into Europe and into Britain are from Eritrea. But yeah.
And like I say, that's another flashpoint as well, because that looks like it's going to kick off as well. So yeah, it's honestly there's a lot of conflict going on in the world at the moment. A lot of conflict, and yet I think we like to think that we live in quite relatively peaceful times, but it's really not. It's really not at the moment.
This is kind of heartbreaking. Like 15 years ago, next month, I started my Odyssey expedition to every country in the world, and I just by the look of whoever, I managed to spend most of the first 2 years of my travels going to all of these countries. I went to 184 countries in the first 2 years without flying, and the only country that the FCO said don't go to any part of this country, it's too dangerous, was Somalia. And you can still go to Somaliland because that's kind of a breakaway republic. They have their own language, they have their own parliament, they have their own currency. They have free and fair elections in Somaliland, and it used to be British Somaliland, whereas the rest of what we call Somalia now is what was Italian Somaliland, which is historically it was a different part of country that was historically one, but and Djibouti was the other bit. Djibouti used to be French Somalia or Somaliland, and it was just this one little 2 year gap where it did actually seem we had Obama in America, we still had Labour in the UK. Things in the world seem to be that the civil wars around the world had all petered out in the noughties. Iraq and Afghanistan, although obviously that had been quite a brutal invasion, both of them at the start, they'd kind of simmered down a little bit. This is before ISIS. This is before the Arab Spring. And it looked like the world was going in the right direction. We were going to work together on the big challenge of our age, which is climate change. And I remember the 2009 climate change summit in Copenhagen. Huge hopes that could be, the beginning of the end of climate change, so to speak. But no, it went all the other way. It all went horribly tits up, and now there seems to be more conflict around the world and more anger and more disgust and more outrage. And you think about Trump, Brexit, invasion of Ukraine. It's all kicked off.
Like I say, I always said this, when foreign politics, it tends not to be a too happy subject to cover, unfortunately. But
you just concentrate all
foreign
about
politics.
Things. Maybe we should do a thing on the show, Ollie, where we just like at the end of each show, we find a nice story from somewhere in the world, and we go, "Isn't that nice?"
I've got a weird story that we could make this the Kim Jong-un story. Although we do well, I feel like if you ever remember, I think it was, I can't remember which YouTube channel did it, but they did the adventures of like Kim Jong-un, and it was like the real life actually happened adventures of Kim Jong-un. They had their own theme tune to the like fictional cartoon show. I feel like we need that to be like, we've got some rather weird Kim Jong-un news coming in.
Yes. Go on then.
Yeah, Kim Jong-un. Two weird stories. He has decided that in order to fix the falling and declining birth rate in North Korea, he's gone out and he's told a bunch of women to have more babies.
Okay, with him.
That's his grand master plan. To which apparently he burst into tears for them and said that we needed to do this because if they didn't, then aliens might come into North Korea, which was really weird. There you go. That's the bit of the weird Kim Jong-un news. And there's obviously the how did North Korea survive the pandemic?
So could we just go back to what you were saying about Kim Jong-un? Was he telling the women to go and have sex or was he telling them that they had to have sex with him?
No, he was telling them they had to go and have more sex.
Okay.
Yes.
In Russia, they have a day off each year when they have a day off work to go home and have sex. I think it's in September. Anyway, sorry, go on. You were telling us about North Korea and them not getting COVID or something.
Yes. Yeah. How did North Korea fare during COVID?
Who knows?
Kim Jong-un himself personally made a vaccine thanks to his deceased father, who came down from heaven, thanks to the heavenly Buddha, and gave him the knowledge to create the vaccine. So yeah,
that's how it works.
Thank you to the glorious leader. Thank you to the glorious leader for curing COVID, because without it wasn't Oxford and AstraZeneca and the Turkish teams working together to make the vaccine. No, it was all thanks to the ghost of Kim Il Sung. Yeah.
Ex Himmel saying, "Are you planning on doing YouTube Shorts?" Yes, I am. Yeah, I think I'm gonna. We'll talk about Labour Social a bit more another time because obviously it's not really the focus of this show. But in the
Yeah,
new
we'll
year,
let you go have some sleep because we can tell you tell you're tired.
in the new year, oh my god, like driving back. So Frank stayed in Poland, and it was just me and Adam driving back from Poland. Um, and it should have taken, like I said earlier, it should have taken 12 hours. It took 18. He drove for 9 hours, and then when we got to the border of Germany, I started driving 9 hours, and we kept on having to stop to wipe the windscreen. It was a blizzard. The visibility was very low. There was loads of roadworks. It wasn't like a hold up because of the roadworks, but loads of like chicanes that you have to go through. You know, like really narrow lanes that they have in Germany, and they have what they do is when they have roadworks or something, they just paint yellow lines on the road, but they leave the white lines on the road. And obviously, if there's snow all over the road, it's really hard to see what lane you're supposed to be in. Plus, I was driving a left-hand drive van, which I'm not used to. I was funny that they were absolutely taking the piss out of me because in the last few months we've been driving an electric car here in Durham, and it's amazing. You just put your foot down, you go. It's like a go-kart. It's great. And then suddenly I'm confronted with gears, and I'm like, oh god, how does this work again? And so they kept on laughing at me because they go, Graham, you're still in fourth. You're still in fourth. And I'm like, oh shit, put it into sixth. You know, obviously I'm going up like 100 miles an hour. But yes. And every time there was a car behind us flashing his lights, it was always a bloody Audi. And I said, why is it always an Audi? And they said, well, you know, it is
It's Germany.
Germany. What you expect? It's a German car. Wait, you know what? If it's not, it's a bloody BM or a Merc. Anyway, so yeah, but I want to do more with the Labour Social channel. Obviously, it is a lot of work trying to keep on top of everything. So watch this space. But yeah, I am planning to do Labour Social shorts on YouTube and also more stuff on TikTok in the future, which is going to be more geared towards getting people to join the channel. Because obviously, we want to be in a position where by the time of the next election, we've got a shitload of subscribers and we can have conversations with Labour MPs and things like that. That we'll get a decent audience. Because at the moment, if Labour put anything out on their channel, no offense, Wes Streeting, but you only get 900 views. I know that because I checked. I get in trouble now.
Like I say, we'll get there. We'll get there. We're getting there. You know?
Yeah. Vendetta says about Kim Jong-un, his dad isn't dead. He's in a glass grave sleeping along with his dad who never passed. He never pissed? Or never passed. Maybe he never pissed as well. Yeah, indeed. The Kim Jong, it was Kim Jong Il, and then what was the one before the first one? What was his name? Kim
Jong-un, Kim Jong Il, Kim Jong Sung, I think. Kim Il Sung.
Yeah,
no.
Son.
Yeah, I think so, something like that.
Yeah, he is the forever. He's the forever president. It's actually the only country in the world that's the executive power is held by a dead man. Jupp says, to be fair, that sounds more reasonable than Hugo Chavez manipulating the voting machines in the 2020 elections. Yeah, considering Hugo Chavez had been dead for 10 years at that point, I mean, it was...
Oh, I'll tell you something else funny to watch as well. If you want something really funny to watch, if you found this episode quite depressing of Geoscope, I do apologize, but that's just the nature of foreign politics. But if you want to watch something really funny, you want to go to the David Pakman show.
Yeah.
He's an American US media personality, and he's done an interview with the QAnon shaman after he's been released. Oh yes, with the QAnon shaman after he's been released from prison, and oh my words, it goes off the rails.
I'm a bit worried to watch this now that you've said it. I feel like I should do a Brian Blessed impression since there was lots of calls for it earlier. In the words of Brian Blessed, this is some Duke Vengeance. What a load of bollocks! There you go. That's mine. Probably just woken the girls up. Whoopsies. Sorry, there you go. That's my Brian Blessed. But Brian Blessed is a very impressive person. He's trekked to I think both poles. He nearly got up to the top of Everest, but he stopped to go and save someone's life and bring them back down the mountain. And he's absolutely bloody huge.
As I've seen the man live. If you, I'll say this now, if you ever get a chance to go see Brian Blessed, go while you can. The man is it's an absolute comedy riot. To go see him, literally go out of your way to go see him as well, because unfortunately he's not a well man, unfortunately, at the moment.
That's a shame.
So if you get a chance to go and see him, go and see him while you still can, because he is amazing to go see live.
And I think back in the day, he married one of Doctor Who's assistants in one of the old Doctor Who episodes. It was Perry. Perry, was it? I can't tell. Let's not get distracted by sci-fi. Anyway, Ollie, thank you so much for joining us tonight, and thank you to everyone in the chat who's joined us as well. So I think we've covered most of the ground there. The madness that's been going on around the world. It's not going to stop, is it?
No.
It's just going to get more and more crazy. It's going to get more and more cray-cray. But we'll be back next week for another helping of GEOSCOPE on was it the 12th, is it? Yeah, the 12th next week.
Yep.
But before then, I will be back in the morning for Morning Brew at 9:30. And depending on how I'm feeling, we've got PMQs, which obviously I'm going to be covering. So we'll do the old, what do you call it? Like sing along, listen along, watch along, commentary for PMQs. But we'll also, I might drop in to the Boris Johnson COVID inquiry answers. So and do a little bit of a listen along to that.
Yeah, that's going to be. I think that's going to be interesting. that's going to be very interesting. I think.
Job points out that it's only good. We're only going to do a show next week if the world makes it to next week. Ollie.
Yeah.
We'll try. We'll try our best. Okay, so thank you so much for watching. Thank you for all the chat, super chats, and everything. And until next time, hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.
Bye.